75 at the airport, sunny 76, Pittsburgh Green Tree right now. Just a chilling story of this young Australian ball player out for a morning job, and three teenagers saying, "There's our target." They decided to shoot him. Why? They said they were bored. Sam Rosenberg, part of my security team, either with Lou Gentile, Bob Miner, John Hudson, CSI investigators, and Security Solutions Incorporated, of course, Mr. Hudson's company. Sam joins me on behalf of Impex, his company, and tries to make some sense of this ever-growing violence in our communities. No matter if you're from Oklahoma or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or from the county that I call home, Beaver County, you just never know. These hidden dangers await us all. Sam, how do you even have anything to defend against something as so senseless and tragic as what happened to this young man in Oklahoma?
Well, Rob, it's hard to put some sense to that. You know, when you look at an incident like this, it is one of the most egregious dynamics that you can see in terms of a violent attack. And it's like a sniper attack. It's almost impossible, quite honestly, to defend against something like that if you don't see it coming in the first place. And the dynamic there means that your frontline defense is always a function of situational awareness. And this is by no means to suggest that when something like this were to happen, which is extremely rare occurrence when it comes to actual predatory violence, something that comes out of the blue in a sniper attack type of fashion like this, virtually random and fundamentally, no build-up or any kind of approach from the bad guy in the first place, something you're just running along and someone shoots you in the back. There's no defense against that functionally unless you see it coming in advance, and to that degree, you have to have a degree of situational awareness. Again, not to suggest that, this poor kid did anything wrong. He just wasn't aware that there was a threat there.
It's the biggest act of a coward when you do something such as that. Even in the Old West, they had scruples. Little maybe, but at least scruples enough to know if you shoot someone in the back, that's nothing more than a mere coward. Is it really?
Absolutely.
Is it really become that we have desensitized and really devalued life so much that this stuff happens on a regular basis with gang initiations throughout the country and in other situations, home invasions, that even we don't hear about it enough? But when we hear something like this, we should understand this is happening every minute throughout our country and maybe in some cases every second throughout the world.
You are absolutely hitting the nail on the head, Rob. The fundamental underlying problem here, this is symptomatic of the problem. And the problem is systematic desensitization to violence. When you see how far our media has come in terms of the violence available to kids on television and video games as a vehicle for systematically desensitizing their moral structure, and their ability to commit heinous violent acts. It's one of the things that I constantly talk about with relation to the school violence dynamic. You look at, it's the same kind of thing. Who can commit something like this? Who can commit an act like this? And it does happen all the time, even though this particular type of incident, when we're talking about predatory violence, is exceptionally rare, that someone would just murder someone on the side of the road. The dynamic of violence in general in our society is pandemic, and it is a function of this desensitization. Let me give you an example. Back in the early 90s when I was at the Marines, and the Marine Corps has always been on the far leading edge in terms of training science. Yeah, the dynamic there with the Combat Development Command was, how do you take an 18-year-old kid and transform him into someone who can survive and manage combat? How do you desensitize them and inoculate them to that type of stress? And one of the tools that was used back when, we're talking 20 years ago, was to put violent video games into the barracks. Now, the dynamic there was, at that time, it was Doom and Quake and these kinds of games that were really cutting-edge first-person shooters at that time. And the reason being is because your body actually has a visceral sympathetic nervous system adrenaline reaction to what is going on in the interplay of you and that screen. And, you come around a corner, there's something there, you shoot it, you survive, and you have this rush of adrenaline, and your heart's pounding, and you go, wow, that's incredible. And the thing is that the Marine Corps looked at this and said, these things are not video games. They're not just entertainment. They're training simulators. They're combat simulators. This is just an example of what I'm talking about. Kids nowadays, by the time they're 18, see something like 60,000 murders and rapes on television by the time they're 18 years old. When you add in the violent video games and this dynamic of systematic desensitization, you have a culture that really starts, as you said, to devalue human life to the point where it is possible for people and young people to override the natural inhibitions that the human being has towards committing egregious violence. The thing about the military, though, is it sounds pathological than putting them in the barracks, but I want you to understand the fundamental difference is that in the military, there's an intense infrastructure of discipline associated with that. You have severe penalties for doing the wrong actions, for touching your firearm or pointing it in the wrong direction. There's all this responsibility and training associated with it. So the desensitization in that environment rarely manifests into a homicidal maniac. But when you have the same models, the same procedural training models, for all intents and purposes, being inculcated into our children, it's easy to see how when you have a kid who's otherwise problematic or doesn't have the discipline structure around them, that you have by 15, 16, a kid who can be a killer without batting an eye, and who's basically been moved down the sliding scale towards sociopathy so far that they don't even feel empathy, don't see any responsibility over what they're doing, and probably fundamentally are detached from the dynamics of what they're doing so far that they're not even aware of the consequences of their action.
All right, let me jump in here, Sam, and when we come back, we're going to talk about if there is a way that anybody can actually defend themselves against such senseless violence. And my guest, Sam Rosenberg, he is from Impacts. You can learn more at livewithconfidence.com. We'll be back.
Got issues?
Most of the people have commented on this.
So does he.
We know that.
Opera piano sale in the Strip District downtown. Call 866-765-4240 for an appointment or details. That's 866-765-4240. Most pianos less than a year old.
Sponsored by Solich Piano.
LiveWithConfidence.com. Impex, the security firm, the man behind it, Sam Rosenberg. Rob Pratte, Marty Griffin, inside story on the 84 Lumber Project Professional Newsline. So I guess you have to really know the perimeter and really know your area before you even go out to start up your car. So what do? Do we have checkout points every morning? How do we protect ourselves from someone who would commit such a coward sniper-like act that could happen in any street across America that happened to that young Aussie ball player in Oklahoma a few days ago, Sam?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, let's look at personal security in general. Okay, the vast majority, as I said, the vast majority of attacks and assaults and robberies and all these types of things do not occur as a sniper attack. Generally speaking, there's an approach that precedes an attack, and that approach is something that we call an interview. So one of the dynamics that we always talk about is that, our system is based around what we call the 3 Ds: deny, opportunity, deter, or defend. And the first objective of personal security is to deny opportunity. So metaphorically speaking, you don't go down the dark alley, you lock your doors at night, you don't leave your keys in your car, you don't give people obvious opportunities to victimize you. If that fails and you end up in an interview, then you have to be able to deter the situation from escalating. And that takes some very specific management skills, not only to know what you're dealing with, but also how to manage it. And then failing that, you have to have physical skills to be able to defend yourself and create those opportunities for escape. Now, when we look at denial of opportunity, the first level of defense, it comes down to situational awareness and fundamentally trusting your intuition. What I always tell people as a very simple analogy is, imagine you're standing outside of an elevator and the elevator doors open up and there's a creepy guy on the elevator, right? Your gut is telling you don't get on the elevator. But too many people, a lot of women in particular will say, well, I don't want to be someone who judges people by, a book by its cover and and judge people on appearance, and they get into a locked steel chamber with this person who their survival instincts are warning them about. So the first rule is to always trust your instincts, but in order to be able to trust your instincts, you have to be switched on. So that doesn't mean you walk around in red alert all the time. It means that you have to incorporate a habit, a trained behavior of situational awareness. Look at your surroundings. Observe what is around you, and if something doesn't seem right, then take appropriate action, whether it's to distance yourself, which is always a very good idea, or to simply, be on the awareness level, have the awareness turned up so that you can respond should something escalate. And the thing is that, like I said, with a sniper attack, if you don't see it coming, for example, you're jogging with your headset on, and I have no idea if this young man had his headset on or something, but if you're running with your earphones on and your iPod, you can't hear what's around you. You've just shut off thoroughly half of your awareness capability.
So are you telling me Sam, are you telling me not a good idea to have any of those things with you?
I don't recommend running with a headset on, okay? I really don't, because you simply are not aware of what's behind you, what's around you, and what may be approaching you. You need to be able to listen. And, you have these senses for a reason. So it's not just observational skills with your eyes, it's also your ears. And the thing is that, when you sense that something is wrong, even if you can't put your finger on what the problem is, you need to heed that warning and take appropriate action. Now, if there's no obvious action to be taken, then at least raise your alert level so that at the first warning of anything, you can immediately take off or respond appropriately. And, not having headsets on, not walking and talking on your phone, not texting and talking, these are very basic things that you can do to deny that initial opportunity and to seem immediately as not such a vulnerable target. The question mark for me is, in this particular instance, these kids obviously went through a target selection phase. That's the first phase in any bad guy's MO. So they went through this target selection phase, and they said, there's our target. The question mark is, what made them choose this target over any other potential targets? And that really comes down very often to this dynamic of someone seeing you as a vulnerable target. So if you don't do the obvious things, don't wear headsets, don't talk on your cell phone or text while you're walking, and you practice good observational and situational skills, half the time you're not even going to be perceived as an easy or likely target because you don't seem as vulnerable. That's rule number one.
Now, also, how do we teach our children, who obviously are just kids, and they're out there doing what kids do, and believe me, you're not going to take away their iPhones, their iPads, you're just headsets, you're just not going to take them away. So how do we teach them, or you as a parent, do you take them away when they're enjoying outdoor activities?
I wouldn't say the idea that you don't have to take away these things. You have to encourage people, and it's a function of training. You have to train these kids and fundamentally explain why. The thing is, it's one thing to say, here's what I want you to do. It's another thing to get buy-in by saying, here's why I want you to do it. And getting that buy-in is vital, because if they understand it, you're talking about teenagers or preteens, have these things, they're not typically, a lot of them are willing and appreciative of that knowledge. When you explain to them, this is why you need to be aware of these things, and I'm going to show you how. And as a parent, you practice these skills, lead by example, and you have opportunities to teach them that. You say, what do you think about this guy on the corner? Does he give you the creeps? What are you reading here? And you create opportunities as a parent to have those teachable moments. For example, with young kids, let me explain something that I teach in our programs for young kids.
Less than 30 seconds, Sam.
You got it. Most of the time people say, don't talk to strangers. But if you think about it, as a young kid, one of the most valuable skills you can have is to be able to talk to strangers.
Communicate.
The key is to be able to talk to the right strangers. So you can start this training very early on as a parent by creating opportunities to say, I want you to go over there and purchase this, bottle of pop from that shop clerk or talk to that person and observe it and inculcate that confidence into those children early on.
All right, listen, I got to cut you off right there. Sam, livewithconfidence.com. Impact's he is Sam Rosenberg. Sam, thank you so much for joining us on the 84 Lumber Project Professional Newsline.
Thank you, Rob. Take care.
Hey, speaking of schools, coming up, Lou Gentile, CSI investigators, Bob Miner, John Hudson will be there. Big event called Sensible Solutions, a one-day school violence seminar at Big Beaver Falls High School. Great school district, great school, 8 to 5 on October the 14th. If you want more information, you can call CSI investigators at 724-775-3577. 724-775-3577.
KDKA traffic on the 5s powered by